Captain Yun Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Keltharan ship, Wisdom's Edge, and stared at the massive object floating in space before them. He had seen many strange things in his 20 years as an explorer, but nothing like this. The thing was huge, bigger than any ship he had ever seen. It was dark and silent, drifting slowly through the empty space of the void sector. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Dr. Kim Nara called from her station. Her voice was excited but worried. She was the best science officer in the Keltharan fleet, and if she sounded concerned, there was good reason. "I see it, Doctor," Yun Dae-ho replied. He walked closer to the main screen, his blue-scaled hands clasped behind his back. "What do you think it is?" Kim Nara looked at her readings again. "It's a ship, sir, but not like any we know. The hull is incredibly thick, maybe 10 times thicker than ours. The design is brutal. Everything about it screams war." Commander Park Jinu stepped forward from his position near the weapons console. He was the military advisor for this mission, and his job was to keep them safe. "Captain, I don't like this. That thing could be dangerous. We should report it and leave." Yun Dae-ho nodded but didn't move away from the screen. The ship before them was like nothing in their records. It was long and angular, covered in thick armor plates. Strange towers and structures stuck out from its surface. Even dead and powerless, it looked threatening. "Run a scan, Doctor," he ordered. "Full spectrum. I want to know everything about that ship." Kim Nara's fingers moved over her controls. The scanning beams reached out to touch the mysterious vessel. Data began flowing across her screen. Her eyes grew wide as she read the results. "Captain, this is impossible," she said. "The ship is almost 3 kilometers long. The mass readings are off the charts. This thing weighs more than our entire fleet combined." "What about power signatures?" Park Jinu asked. "Weapons? Life signs?" "Nothing," Kim Nara replied. "It's completely dead. No power, no life signs, no active systems. It's been drifting for months, maybe longer." Yun Dae-ho studied the readings on his personal display. The ship was clearly built for war, but by whom? The Keltharans knew most of the major spacefaring races in this part of the galaxy. None of them built ships like this. "Wait," Kim Nara said suddenly. "I'm picking up markings on the hull. Text of some kind. Let me enhance the image." The main screen zoomed in on the side of the massive ship. Strange symbols appeared, carved deep into the metal. Below them, in several languages, were words that made Kim Nara gasp. "What does it say?" Yun Dae-ho asked. It's human," Kim Nara whispered. "The ship is human." A silence fell over the bridge. The Keltharans had met humans only recently. They seemed like a pleasant enough species, good traders and friendly in their dealings. But this ship told a very different story about humanity. "Human?" Park Jinu said. "That's impossible. We've seen human ships. They're small, simple things, nothing like this monster." Kim Nara shook her head. "The markings are clear. This ship is called the Iron Will. It's definitely human construction." Yun Dae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. If humans could build ships like this, what else didn't the Keltharans know about them? He had always prided himself on understanding other species, but this changed everything. "Captain," came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving an automated signal from the human ship." "Put it through," Yun Dae-ho ordered. A mechanical voice filled the bridge, speaking in basic galactic common. "This is UES Iron Will, Battleship Class 7. This vessel has been abandoned under Naval Protocol 47. Salvage rights are granted to any peaceful species under the Galactic Cooperation Treaty. Warning, this vessel contains active defense systems. Approach with caution." The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. "Battleship Class 7? Park Jinu said. "That implies there are 6 other classes above it." Kim Nara was already working at her station, trying to learn more about the ship. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple docking ports. The ship seems designed to allow other vessels to board it. But look at these readings." She transferred her data to the main screen. The ship's layout appeared, showing massive corridors and rooms. Everything was built on a scale that seemed impossible. "The corridors are huge," she continued. "Much bigger than they need to be for humans. And look at these rooms. This one looks like it could hold 1,000 people. This section seems to be weapons storage. And this I think this entire deck is just armor plating. Yoon Dae-ho studied the layout. The ship was built like a fortress that could fly through space. Every surface was armored. Every system seemed to have backups. It was clear that whoever designed this ship expected it to take massive damage and keep fighting. What happened to the crew? He wondered aloud. No way to tell from here, Kim Nara replied. But Captain, we have to board this ship. Think of what we could learn. Human technology, human military thinking, human engineering. This is the discovery of a lifetime. Park Ji-nu shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. That ship is dangerous. Even if it's dead now, who knows what systems might still be active? The message mentioned defense systems. But it also mentioned salvage rights, Kim Nara argued. The humans left this ship here deliberately. They want someone to find it. Yoon Dae-ho found himself torn between scientific curiosity and military caution. The ship before them represented a mystery that could change everything they knew about humanity, but it also represented unknown dangers. Doctor, what do your scans tell you about the ship's condition? He asked. Kim Nara looked at her readings again. The hull is intact. No major damage that I can see. The ship looks like it was simply parked here, as if the crew just turned everything off and left. But why would they do that? Park Ji-nu asked. Maybe the war ended, suggested Lee So-man, the security chief. She had been quiet until now, studying the tactical implications of the massive ship. If this is a warship, maybe they didn't need it anymore. That thought was almost more disturbing than finding a damaged ship. If humans could simply abandon something this powerful because they didn't need it, what did that say about their military capabilities? Yoon Dae-ho made his decision. We're going to board it, but carefully. Dr. Kim, I want you to lead a small team. Security Chief Lee will provide protection. Commander Park, you'll monitor from here and be ready to get us out if anything goes wrong. Captain, I really think this is a mistake, Park Ji-nu said. Maybe, Yoon Dae-ho replied. But this is why we're out here. To explore, to learn, to understand. This ship could teach us more about humans than years of diplomatic contact. Kim Nara was already preparing her equipment. I'll need full scanning. Gear, translation computers, and sample containers. This is going to be the most important investigation of our careers. As the Wisdom's Edge moved closer to the human battleship, Yoon Dae-ho couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to cross a line they couldn't uncross. The ship ahead of them wasn't just a vessel, it was a message, a warning, a glimpse into the true nature of humanity. The docking procedure took 2 hours. The human ship's docking port was massive, designed for ships much larger than the Wisdom's Edge. As they connected, Yoon Dae-ho felt the slight tremor that meant they were now physically connected to the human warship. Docking complete, Captain, reported the pilot. The airlock is cycling. Atmosphere on the other side reads as breathable. Kim Nara stood near the airlock with her team, ready to step into the unknown. Captain, we're ready to go. Yoon Dae-ho nodded. Remember, this is just a preliminary investigation. Don't touch anything you don't understand. Take pictures, take readings, but don't activate any systems. Understood, sir. As the airlock opened and the boarding party stepped into the human ship, Yoon Dae-ho wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. The iron will waited in the darkness ahead, full of secrets that might be better left undiscovered. The exploration of humanity's true nature was about to begin. Dr. Kim Nara stepped through the airlock and into the human battleship. The first thing that hit her was the smell. It wasn't bad, just different. Metal and oil and something else she couldn't identify. The second thing was the size of everything. The corridor stretched ahead of her like a vast tunnel. The ceiling was so high above her head that she had to crane her neck to see it. The walls were thick metal, covered in pipes and cables and things she didn't recognize. Emergency lights cast a dim red glow over everything, making shadows dance in the corners. This is incredible, whispered Choi Min-ho, the tech specialist on her team. Look at the size of these corridors. Why would humans need so much space? Security. Chief Lee So-man walked beside them, her weapon ready but not raised. Maybe they're not just for humans, she said quietly. Maybe they built this ship to carry other things too. Kim Nara activated her scanning equipment and began recording everything. The walls were incredibly thick, much thicker than any ship design she knew. The metal itself was strange, too, some kind of alloy that her scanner couldn't identify completely. "The construction is so heavy," she said into her recorder. "Everything is built to last. No, not just to last. Everything is built to survive damage, massive damage." They walked deeper into the ship, their footsteps echoing in the huge corridor. Side passages branched off in all directions, leading to parts of the ship they couldn't see. Signs on the walls were written in human languages, with symbols that meant nothing to the Keltharan team. "Can you read any of this?" Lee Soman asked, pointing to a sign. Choi Minho pulled out his translation device. "Some of it. This way leads to something called Medical Bay 7. This other sign says Weapons Storage, Deck 12. Medical Bay 7? How many medical bays does one ship need?" They followed the corridor toward the medical bay. Kim Nara wanted to understand how humans designed their ships, and medical facilities would tell her a lot about the crew that lived here. The medical bay doors were massive, 3 times the size of normal doors. When they managed to get them open, Kim Nara gasped at what she saw inside. The room was enormous, filled with hundreds of beds. But these weren't normal medical beds. They were surgical tables, each one equipped with tools and machines for treating severe injuries. The equipment looked crude compared to Keltharan medical technology, but it was clearly effective. "Look at this," Choi Minho called from across the room. He was standing next to a wall filled with what looked like metal drawers. "I think these are stasis pods, hundreds of them." Kim Nara hurried over to examine the pods. They were clearly designed to keep someone alive while badly injured. The life support systems were simple but powerful. Each pod could sustain someone for months, maybe years. "Why would a ship need so many emergency medical pods?" Lee Soman asked. Kim Nara was beginning to form a terrible picture in her mind. "Because they expected massive casualties. This isn't just a warship. It's a mobile hospital designed to keep thousands of wounded soldiers alive." She moved to one of the computer terminals and activated her interface device. Slowly, carefully, she began to access the medical records stored in the ship's database. What she found made her feel sick. The records showed treatment for injuries that would kill most beings instantly, burns that covered entire bodies, missing limbs, wounds from weapons she couldn't imagine. But the humans had treated these injuries and sent the soldiers back to fight. "Captain Yoon," she called through her communicator. "You need to see these medical records. The humans who crewed this ship. They were incredibly tough. They survived injuries that would kill any Keltharan." "What kind of injuries?" came the captain's voice. Kim Nara looked at the files again. "Plasma burns covering 60% of the body, complete loss of limbs, head injuries that should have been fatal. But the records show these soldiers recovered and returned to duty." Choi Minho had found another section of the medical bay. "Dr. Kim, you need to see this. I think this is where they made artificial body parts. The manufacturing area was filled with machines for creating replacement limbs, artificial organs, and other body parts. The designs were crude, but functional. Humans, it seemed, simply replaced whatever parts of their bodies got damaged and kept fighting." "This is madness," Lee Soman said. "What kind of war requires this level of medical support?" They left the medical bay and continued exploring. The next area they found was labeled crew quarters. Kim Nara expected to find comfortable living spaces, but what she found instead was more like a military barracks. The rooms were small and simple. Each crew member had a narrow bed, a small storage locker, and nothing else. Personal items were minimal. Photos of families, small religious symbols, books. But everything was designed to be packed quickly. "They lived like soldiers," Kim Nara observed. "Even on this massive ship, personal space was limited. They prioritized function over comfort." Choi Minho was accessing personal logs from the crew quarters. "Listen to this," he said, playing a recording through his translator. A human voice spoke in calm, measured tones. "Day 243 of patrol. Still no contact with enemy forces. The crew is getting restless. We've been away from home for 8 months now, but morale remains high. Everyone knows we might not see Earth again, but that's the job. Someone has to guard the frontier. The recording ended, leaving the Keltharan team in silence. 8 months. On patrol, Lee Soman said. They expected to be away from their homes for that long? And listen to how calm he was about maybe never returning, Kim Nara added. Like it was normal. They found more personal logs as they explored. Each one painted a picture of humans who had accepted that death was a constant possibility. They talked about their families, their hopes, their fears, but always with the understanding that their job came first. One log that particularly disturbed Kim Nara was from a human female named Private Han Jiwoo. She talked about her daughter's birthday, which she would miss because of the patrol. But she wasn't angry or sad. She was proud to serve, proud to protect her family by fighting far from home. These humans, Kim Nara said to her team, they think differently than we do. For them, war isn't something terrible that happens sometimes. It's a way of life. They prepare for it, train for it, accept it. The team continued deeper into the ship, finding more evidence of humanity's military mindset. Training areas where humans practiced fighting in every imaginable environment. Workshops where they maintained and improved their weapons. Recreation areas that doubled as additional medical stations during emergencies. Everything on the ship served multiple purposes. Nothing was wasted. Every space could be converted for war if needed. But it was in the ship's data center that Kim Nara found the most disturbing information. Choi Minho had managed to access the ship's main computer system, and the files he found painted a picture of humanity that was both impressive and terrifying. Dr. Kim, he called urgently. You need to see this. I found the ship's mission logs. Kim. Nara hurried over to read the files on his screen. The logs detailed the ship's activities over the past year, patrol missions, escort duties, combat operations. But what shocked her was the casual way the humans discussed massive battles. One log entry described a battle where the Iron Will had fought 12 enemy ships at once. The humans had won, but taken heavy damage. 40% of the crew had been killed or wounded. The log entry treated this as a normal engagement. Another entry discussed something called the Terran Defense Grid. Apparently, the Iron Will was just one ship in a network of thousands, all protecting human space from enemies that the Keltharans had never heard of. Thousands of ships like this one? Lee Soman asked. How is that possible? Look at this entry, Choi Minho said, pointing to another file. They mentioned something called the protocol. It seems to be some kind of emergency procedure. Kim Nara read the entry carefully. It was vague, but it mentioned activating defensive systems if the ship was ever boarded by unknown forces. A chill ran down her spine. We need to be very careful, she warned her team. This ship might not be as dead as we thought. As if responding. To her words, a soft humming sound began to echo through the corridors around them. The emergency lights seemed to grow slightly brighter. What was that? Lee Soman asked, raising her weapon. Before anyone could answer, a calm voice spoke from speakers hidden in the walls. It was speaking in perfect Keltharan language. Welcome aboard the UES Iron Will. Unknown life forms detected. Beginning security assessment. Please remain calm while defensive systems evaluate threat level. The three Keltharans looked at each other in growing panic. Captain Yoon, Kim Nara called into her communicator. We have a problem. The ship is waking up. Back on the Wisdoms, Edge Captain Yoon Daeho heard his science officer's panicked voice and felt his blood turn cold. On his main screen, he could see the human battleship beginning to glow with power as its systems came online. Dr. Kim, get out of there now, he ordered. But it was too late. The massive ship was awakening, and his people were trapped inside. The humming sound grew louder as the human battleship continued to wake up. Dr. Kim Nara and her team found themselves in a corridor that was slowly filling with light as more systems came online. The red emergency lighting was being replaced by bright white lights that made everything look harsh and military. This way, Lee Soman called, pointing toward what looked like a main passage. We need to find the weapons systems before this ship becomes fully active. Kim Nara knew that understanding the ship's weapons would help them understand humanity's true military capability. If the medical bay had been disturbing, she was afraid of what the weapons would reveal. They followed signs that Choi Minho translated as they moved through the massive corridors. Weapons Bay Alpha, missile storage, main battery control. The deeper they went into the ship, the more military terminology they encountered. Look at the size of these passages, Kim Nara observed. They're not just big enough for humans to walk through. They're big enough to move massive equipment, heavy weapons, ammunition, maybe even vehicles. They reached a section of the ship, where the corridor split into multiple directions. Signs pointed to different weapon systems. Kim Nara felt overwhelmed by the choices, but one sign caught her attention. Primary Armament Bay 1. If we're going to understand human weapons, she told her team, we should start with their biggest guns. The doors to the primary armament bay were enormous, clearly designed to allow large equipment to pass through. When they managed to get them open, Kim Nara stepped into a space so vast it took her breath away. The bay stretched ahead of them for hundreds of meters. Along the walls were weapons that defied imagination. Cannons so large that Kim Nara could have walked through their barrels. Loading mechanisms that could lift ammunition the size of small vehicles. Power cables as thick as her body running, to charging stations that hummed with barely contained energy. These aren't ship weapons, Choi Minho whispered. These are designed to destroy planets. Kim Nara approached one of the massive cannons and activated her scanner. The readings made no sense at first. The weapon was designed to fire projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy would be incredible, enough to punch through any armor she could imagine. Look at this ammunition, Lee Soman called from across the bay. The ammunition storage area contained projectiles of different types. Some were simple metal slugs, designed to destroy through pure kinetic energy. Others were more complex, with warheads that Kim Nara's scanner couldn't fully analyze. But it was the targeting system that truly frightened her. When Choi Minho managed to access the weapons computer, they discovered that these cannons could hit targets from distances measured in light minutes. The humans could destroy enemy ships before those ships even knew they were under attack. This is impossible, Kim Nara said, studying the targeting data. No one can hit a moving target at these ranges. The calculations alone would require... She stopped as she realized what she was seeing. The targeting computer was more advanced than anything in the Keltheran fleet. It could track hundreds of targets simultaneously, calculate firing solutions that accounted for planetary gravity, stellar, interference, and the movement of targets that were trying to avoid being hit. They've turned warfare into a science, she said quietly. Every variable calculated, every possibility planned for. They moved to another weapons bay, this one labeled Secondary Armament. Kim Nara expected smaller weapons, but what she found instead were guns that would be considered primary weapons on any Keltheran ship, plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid-sized targets, missile launchers that could fire hundreds of guided projectiles at once, energy weapons that could drain the power from an enemy ship's shields. Each weapons system had backup power, backup ammunition, backup targeting computers. Everything has redundancy, Lee Soman observed. If one system fails, 3 others can take its place. But it was in the personal weapons storage that Kim Nara truly began to understand the human approach to warfare. Room after room filled with weapons, designed for individual soldiers. Each human apparently carried enough firepower to level a small building. The personal weapons were as heavily built as the ship's main guns. Multiple backup systems, redundant power sources, weapons designed to function even when heavily damaged. But more disturbing were the close combat weapons. Why do they have swords? Choi Minho asked, pointing to a rack of metal blades. Kim Nara examined the weapons. They weren't decorative. They were functional tools, designed for when projectile weapons failed. The humans had planned for every level of warfare, from space battles to hand-to-hand combat. They expect to fight even when everything else breaks, she realized. Their soldiers carry backup weapons for their backup weapons. The team found manufacturing areas where the ship could produce its own ammunition and replacement weapons during extended campaigns. The humans had designed this vessel to fight for years without resupply against enemies that could destroy entire fleets. Look at this production schedule, Choi Minho said, accessing the manufacturing computer. This ship can produce 50,000 rounds of main cannon ammunition per day. How long were they planning to fight? Kim Nara was studying the ship's tactical database when she found something that made her feel cold inside. The database contained detailed information about weapons designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat at ranges the Keltharans had never imagined possible. But more than that, It contained information about weapons the ship didn't carry. References to planet crackers and star killers and dreadnought armament that made the Iron Will's massive guns look small. "This ship," she said slowly, "is not their biggest warship. It's not even close." The database referenced vessel classifications that went far beyond the Iron Will's Class 7 designation. Class 12 dreadnoughts, Class 15 battle stations, something called a Class 20 world ender that could apparently destroy entire solar systems. "How many ships do the humans have?" Lee Soman asked. Kim Nara accessed the fleet registry and immediately wished she hadn't. The numbers were staggering. Thousands of ships like the Iron Will, hundreds of larger vessels, dozens of dreadnoughts that could fight entire fleets alone. But it was the ship's AI that provided the most disturbing revelation. When Choi Minho finally managed to establish communication with the computer system, it politely informed them that the Iron Will was considered a patrol vessel by human standards. "Patrol vessel?" Kim Nara asked the AI. "What is your primary mission?" "The UES Iron Will is classified as a light cruiser assigned to frontier patrol duties," the AI replied in perfect Keltharan. "Primary mission is long-range reconnaissance and first contact scenarios with unknown species." "Light cruiser?" Choi Minho repeated. "This ship is 3 kilometers long." "Affirmative. Standard patrol vessel dimensions for extended deployment. Capability." Kim Nara felt the world spinning around her. If this massive warship was just a light cruiser designed for first contact, what did humanity consider a real warship? "AI, what classification of vessel would be used for actual warfare?" she asked. "That information is classified under Naval Security Protocol 15. However, I can inform you that Class 12 and above vessels are restricted from first contact. Missions due to their intimidating appearance." The team looked at each other in growing horror. The humans had ships so powerful, so threatening, that they couldn't use them for diplomatic missions because they would terrify other species. "AI, why was this ship abandoned?" Kim Nara asked. The Outer Rim War concluded with the complete surrender of hostile forces. The UES Iron Will was placed in standby mode as part of the peacetime fleet reduction. This vessel was deemed surplus to current defensive requirements. "Surplus?" Lee Soman asked. "They just left it here because they didn't need it?" "Affirmative. The conflict's resolution eliminated the need for extended patrol operations in this sector." Kim Nara realized the most terrifying truth of all. The humans hadn't lost this ship in battle. They hadn't abandoned it due to damage or disaster. They had simply won their war so completely that they could afford to leave battleships floating in space because they had more than they needed. "How many ships like this were abandoned?" she asked the AI. 17 Class 7 vessels were placed in standby mode following the conclusion of the Outer Rim War. All are equipped with basic maintenance systems and can be reactivated if needed. 17 ships like this one, just floating in space, waiting to be called back to war if humanity needed them. Kim Nara tried to imagine the military force that could afford to abandon such powerful weapons. "Dr. Kim," came Captain Yoon's urgent voice through her communicator. "You need to get out of there now. That ship's power signature is growing stronger. I think something is waking up." But Kim Nara was too stunned to move. She had come aboard the Iron Will expecting to learn about human technology. Instead, she had discovered that humanity was not the peaceful trading species the Keltharans thought. They knew. They were warriors. Professional, efficient, terrifyingly effective warriors who had built a military machine so powerful they could abandon battleships like discarded toys. "AI," she asked quietly, "what would happen if humanity decided to expand their territory?" I am not programmed to speculate on political decide. As the alarms continued to sound through the massive corridors of the Iron Will, Dr. Kim Nara knew they needed to understand the humans who had lived and worked on this ship. The weapons and medical facilities had shown her humanity's capability for war, but she needed to understand their minds. "This way," she called to her team, following signs that led to what the translation system called personal data archives. If she could access the crew's personal files, maybe she could understand what kind of beings could create and operate such a devastating war machine. The archive room was smaller than the weapons bays, but still massive by Keltharan standards. Rows of computer terminals lined the walls, each one connected to vast data storage systems. Choi Min-ho immediately began working to access the files, while Lee So-min kept watch at the door. "I'm getting into the personnel records," Choi Min-ho reported. The humans kept detailed files on every crew member, their backgrounds, their training, their psychological profiles. Kim Nara looked over his shoulder as the first file appeared on the screen. It was a crew member named Sergeant Oh Yuna, age 24, from a place called Seoul on Earth. Her service record showed 5 years of active duty, 3 major battles, 2 commendations for bravery under fire. She was just 24, Kim Nara said quietly. Younger than most Keltherans when they finish their basic education. But look at her combat experience. The file showed that Oh Yuna had volunteered for military service at age 18. She had spent a year in basic training that would have killed most beings, then been assigned to increasingly dangerous missions. Her psychological profile noted that she was highly motivated, loyal to her unit, and willing to sacrifice herself for the mission. Willing to sacrifice herself, Lee So-min repeated. At 24 years old, they accessed more files. Each one told a similar story. Young humans who had volunteered for military service, knowing they might never return home. Beings who had trained from childhood for warfare, who viewed death in battle as the highest honor they could achieve. One file particularly disturbed Kim Nara. It belonged to Captain Han Ji-woo, the ship's executive officer. Age 32, married, with 2 young children. Her file showed that she had been away from her family for 18 months when the ship was abandoned. 18 months, Kim Nara said. She left her children for 18 months to serve on this ship. Captain Han's personal logs revealed even more. She had turned down 3 promotions that would have kept her on Earth with her family, choosing instead to stay with her combat unit. Her reason was simple. "My crew needs me more than my children do. They have their father. My soldiers only have me." She chose her military family over her blood family, Choi Min-ho observed. How is that possible? Kim Nara continued reading the psychological profiles. Each crew member had been evaluated for their willingness to follow orders, their ability to function under extreme stress, and their commitment to what the humans called the mission. The standards were incredibly high, but 12,000 humans had met them. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a section about crew selection. "Every person on this ship volunteered for deep space assignment. They knew they might be away from Earth for years. They knew they might never come back, and they volunteered anyway." The files showed that the crew came from all over Earth. Different nations, different cultures, different languages, but they had all united under one goal: protecting humanity from threats in deep space. One log entry from a young technician, named Private Lim So-young, particularly struck Kim Nara. So-young had written about her decision to join the crew of the Iron Will. "My parents don't understand why I'm doing this. They think I'm throwing my life away for some abstract concept of duty. But they're wrong. I'm not throwing my life away. I'm using it for something important. If we don't defend the frontier, who will? If we don't stand guard in the dark places between the stars, what will come crawling out of that darkness toward Earth?" The entry continued. "I may die out here. Probably will if the war goes on long enough. But my death will mean that some family on Earth gets to live in peace. My sacrifice will mean that some child grows up without knowing what a plasma burn looks like. That's worth dying for." Kim Nara felt tears forming in her eyes. These humans weren't monsters. They were young people who had chosen to sacrifice everything to protect others. They had turned themselves into weapons, not because they loved violence, but because they loved peace enough to fight for it. "Access the psychological evaluation reports," she told Choi Min-ho. "I want to understand how their minds work." The psychological files revealed something that chilled Kim Nara to her core. The humans on this ship weren't unusual. They were normal. Every psychological test indicated that they were typical representatives of their species. Dr. Bae Hyun, the ship's chief psychologist, had written extensive reports about the crew's mental state. His conclusions were disturbing. The crew of the Iron Will exhibits psychological profiles consistent with the general human population. Their willingness to sacrifice themselves for others, their ability to function under extreme stress, and Their capacity for sustained combat operations are all within normal human parameters. Normal human parameters. What kind of species considered willingness to die for others to be normal? Kim Nara found her answer in Dr. Bay's analysis of human evolutionary psychology. Humans, he explained, had evolved on a world where survival required constant warfare, not just against other humans, but against their entire environment. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate changes that could wipe out entire civilizations. Humans, Dr. Bay had written, are the only known species that achieved spaceflight while still actively fighting wars on their homeworld. They never had a period of planetary peace before reaching the stars. War is not an aberration for humans. It is their natural state. The report continued. Other species achieved peace, then developed space travel as a natural extension of their scientific curiosity. Humans developed space travel as a weapon. They went to the stars not to explore, but to survive. Every human ship is built as if it might need to fight for its existence, because in human thinking, it probably will. Kim Nara realized she was reading about a species that had never known true peace. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for the next threat, the next war, the next challenge that might destroy them. They had turned survival into an art form. Look at this training record, Lee Summon called from another terminal. She had found the ship's training logs, which showed what the crew did during their long patrols. The humans trained constantly. Combat exercises, weapons maintenance, tactical simulations, emergency procedures. But they also studied languages, cultures, diplomatic protocols, scientific procedures. Each crew member was trained to be both a warrior and a scholar. They're not just soldiers, Kim Nara realized. They're prepared for anything. First contact with aliens, scientific discoveries, natural disasters, equipment failures. Every human on this ship could probably run an entire expedition by themselves. The training logs showed that humans expected each crew member to be capable of multiple roles. The same person who operated the main weapons could also perform surgery, negotiate with aliens, or repair the ship's engines. They had created a crew where every individual was a backup for every other individual. Redundancy again, Choi Minho observed, even in their personnel. But it was the ship's social structure that truly amazed Kim Nara. Despite being a military vessel with strict hierarchy, the crew functioned as a family. Personal logs showed them celebrating each other's birthdays, mourning their losses together, supporting each other through the stress of long deployments. One log entry from Commander Park Jinu, the ship's tactical officer, described the crew's reaction to news that Earth had been attacked. Word came today that the enemy hit the orbital defense stations around Earth. We lost 3,000 people in the attack. The crew is angry, but not panicked. They want revenge, but they're thinking clearly about how to get it. In any other species, news like this would cause despair or rage that clouds judgment. Humans get angry, then get focused. It's like they become more dangerous when threatened, not less. Kim Nara found the ship's casualty reports and felt sick. The Iron Will had lost over 2,000 crew members during its active service, but the remaining crew had not been demoralized by these losses. Instead, they had been motivated by them. Humans, she realized, became more determined when they suffered losses. Other species might surrender or retreat when faced with heavy casualties. Humans use their dead as inspiration to fight harder. Dr. Kim, Choi Minho called urgently. I found something you need to see. It's labeled The Protocol. Kim Nara hurried over to read the file. The protocol was a set of emergency procedures designed to activate if the ship was ever captured or boarded by hostile forces. But as she read the details, she realized it wasn't just about protecting the ship. It's a psychological warfare system, she said quietly. If enemies board the ship, the protocol is designed to show them exactly what humanity is capable of. It's meant to terrify them into surrender. The protocol included displaying humanity's military history, showing the fate of species that had fought humans, and demonstrating the ship's full combat capability. The moment the ship's AI began its educational protocol, Dr. Kim Nara knew they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. The massive screens throughout the corridor lit up with images and data that made her wish they had never boarded the human battleship. Welcome to the Cultural Exchange Program of the United Earth Space Navy, the AI announced in its calm, polite voice. This presentation will help your species understand humanity's place in the galactic community and prevent unfortunate misunderstandings. Kim Nara looked at her team. Choi Minho was staring at his scanner in confusion. Lee So-min had her weapon, ready, but didn't know what to aim it at, and all around them the ship was waking up with sounds of massive machinery coming online. The first image that appeared on the screens was Earth itself, a blue and green world that looked peaceful and beautiful. The AI's voice continued. Humanity evolved on Earth, a world where survival required constant adaptation to changing threats. This environment shaped human psychology and military doctrine. The image changed to show early human history. Battles between primitive tribes, wars between nations, conflicts that seemed to consume entire continents. Kim Nara watched in growing horror as the AI displayed thousands of years of almost constant warfare. Humans have been fighting organized wars for over 6,000 years, the AI explained. During this time, they developed increasingly sophisticated methods of defeating their enemies. They also developed a unique approach to warfare based on the concept of total victory. Total victory? Kim Nara asked. Yes. Unlike most species, humans do not fight to achieve limited goals. When humans go to war, they fight until their enemies surrender completely or are destroyed. They do not accept partial defeats or temporary truces. This approach has proven highly effective. The screens showed more recent human conflicts. Wars that had destroyed entire nations, battles that had killed millions of people. But what disturbed Kim Nara most was how quickly humans recovered from these disasters. They rebuilt their cities, regrew their populations, and prepared for the next war. Human military doctrine emphasizes rapid recovery and overwhelming response, the AI continued. When attacked, humans mobilize their entire civilization for war. Their industrial capacity, scientific knowledge, and population all become part of their military machine. Kim Nara was beginning to understand the true scale of human military thinking. They didn't just build armies. They turned their entire species into a weapon when threatened. The presentation moved to humanity's expansion into space. The AI showed the first human space missions, which were launched while wars were still being fought on Earth. Even there, early space stations were armed and armored. Humans began militarizing space within 50 years of achieving orbit, the AI explained. This was not due to aggression, but to experience. Human history taught them that any territory not defended would eventually be attacked. The screens showed the construction of orbital defense platforms, armed space stations, and the first military spaceships. Everything was built with the assumption that it would need to fight for its existence. The UES Iron Will represents the 7th generation of human military spacecraft, the AI said. Each generation has been larger, more powerful, and more versatile than the last. Current generation ships are capable of independent operation for periods measured in decades. Kim Nara watched as the AI displayed schematics of human ship classes. The Iron Will was indeed a small ship by human standards. The larger vessels were mobile cities, capable of supporting hundreds of thousands of people while simultaneously fighting entire fleets. Wait, she said to the AI. How many ships does humanity have? Current human fleet strength is classified information. However, I can tell you that active fleet strength is sufficient to defend human space against any known threat, with substantial reserves held for emergency deployment. Any known threat. Kim Nara realized that humanity had built their military to fight enemies they hadn't even encountered yet. They were prepared for wars that hadn't happened against species they had never met. The AI continued its presentation, showing humanity's first contact with alien species. Kim Nara expected to see diplomatic meetings and peaceful exchanges. Instead, she saw war. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence occurred in the Centauri system, the AI explained. The Centauran Empire attempted to claim human colonies as vassals. The resulting conflict lasted 3 years and ended with the complete dissolution of the Centauran Empire. The screens showed battles in space that defied imagination. Human fleets fighting against alien ships, usually outnumbered but winning, through superior tactics and more powerful weapons. Kim Nara watched human captains sacrifice their own ships to destroy enemy vessels. Human soldiers fighting to the death rather than surrender. Humans do not retreat, the AI observed. This psychological trait has proven decisive in numerous conflicts. Enemy species often expect humans to withdraw when faced with superior numbers. Instead, humans typically counterattack. The presentation showed more conflicts. The HFY War, where humans had fought against an alliance of 12 species, and 1. The Vegan Incident, where a single human battleship had destroyed an entire enemy fleet. The Outer Rim Campaign, where humans had conquered a region of space larger than most stellar empires. How do you win against such overwhelming odds? Kim Nara asked. Human military doctrine emphasizes several key principles, the AI replied. First, they accept higher casualty rates than most species are willing to sustain. Second, they use technology to multiply force effectiveness. Third, they fight with complete commitment until the enemy surrenders unconditionally. Kim Nara was beginning to understand why the ship's medical facilities were so extensive. Humans expected to take massive losses and had built systems to keep fighting anyway. The AI showed her the aftermath of human victories. In every case, the defeated species had been given the choice to surrender completely or be destroyed. Most chose surrender. Those that didn't cease to exist. What happens to species that surrender to humanity? She asked. Surrendering species become human protectorates, the AI explained. They retain their internal government and culture, but accept human oversight of their military and foreign policy. Most protectorate species report high satisfaction with this arrangement. The screens showed former enemies that now lived peacefully under human protection. Their worlds were prosperous, their people safe, but their space navies had been disbanded and their weapons destroyed. Humans prefer to win through overwhelming force rather than long campaigns, the AI continued. This minimizes casualties on both sides and allows for quicker post-war recovery. Kim Nara realized that humanity's approach to war was not based on cruelty or aggression. It was based on efficiency. They fought with such overwhelming force that their enemies quickly realized resistance was hopeless. AI, she said carefully, what would happen if humanity decided to expand their territory? I am not programmed to speculate on political decisions, the AI replied. However, current human strategic doctrine calls for defensive operations and peaceful coexistence with non-threatening species. And threatening species? Threatening species are offered the opportunity to cease threatening behavior. If they decline this opportunity, they are neutralized. The simple, matter-of-fact way the AI said neutralized made Kim Nara's blood run cold. The presentation continued, showing the current state of human space. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. But what truly frightened Kim Nara was what the AI showed her next. Humanity's reserve capacity. The ships and personnel you have seen represent humanity's active military forces, the AI explained. In the event of a major threat, human industrial capacity can produce additional forces at a rate of approximately 1 battleship per day, with full crew training completed within 6 months. 1 battleship per day. Kim Nara tried to imagine the industrial capacity required to build ships like the Iron Will that quickly. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a war machine that could mass-produce battleships like other species produced food. How long could humanity maintain that production rate? She asked. Historical precedent suggests that humans can maintain wartime production for periods measured in decades without significant strain on their economy. Decades. The humans could build thousands of battleships without breaking their economy. The AI began showing her humanity's current defensive arrangements. Space stations the size of small moons, armed with weapons that could destroy planets. Fleets of ships patrolling the borders of human space, ready to respond to any threat. Early warning systems that could detect hostile forces from light years away. Human space is currently divided into 3 defensive zones, the AI explained. The core worlds, where civilian populations live in safety. The border worlds, where military forces maintain constant readiness. And the frontier zone, where ships like the Iron Will conduct long-range patrols. Kim Nara realized that the Keltharan Empire existed in what humans considered their frontier zone. They were living on the very edge of human space, protected by Human ships, without even knowing it. Are there human ships near Keltheran space? She asked. I cannot provide specific deployment information. However, all inhabited systems within the human defensive sphere. Dr. Kim Nara stood in the docking bay of the human battleship Iron Will, looking back at the massive corridors they had explored. Her team was quiet, each of them processing what they had learned. The ship around them had returned to its dormant state, but Kim Nara knew she would never again see it as just an abandoned vessel. Dr. Kim, Lee Soman said quietly, we need to get back to our ship. Captain Yoon is requesting immediate departure. Kim Nara nodded, but she couldn't resist taking one last scan of the human ship's systems. Her readings showed massive power reserves, weapons that could destroy fleets, manufacturing capabilities that could support wars lasting decades, all of it sleeping quietly, waiting for a signal that might never come. It's not abandoned, she said to her team. It's sleeping, like a predator that doesn't need to hunt but could wake up instantly if threatened. They returned to the Wisdom's Edge in silence. Captain Yoon Daeho was waiting for them in the airlock, his expression troubled. The moment they were aboard, he ordered the ship to disconnect from the human battleship and move to a safe distance. Report, he said simply. Kim Nara looked at her captain and realized she didn't know where to begin. How do you explain that? Everything your species believed about humanity was wrong? How do you tell someone that the friendly traders they thought they knew were actually the most dangerous military force in the galaxy? Captain, she said slowly, we need to contact the Keltharan High Council immediately, and we need to do it through secure channels. That bad? Yoon Daeho asked. Worse than bad. It changes everything. They gathered in the ship's secure conference room. Kim Nara activated the emergency communication system and sent a priority message to Admiral Lim So-young, the commander of the Keltharan Exploration Fleet. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen within minutes. Captain Yoon, Dr. Kim, I understand you've made an important discovery. Admiral, Kim Nara said, we've discovered the true nature of humanity's military capabilities. The humans we've been trading with are not the peaceful species we thought they were. Admiral Lim's expression grew serious. Explain. Kim Nara spent the next hour describing what they had found aboard the Iron Will, the weapons that could destroy planets, the medical facilities designed for massive casualties, the crew records showing a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years, the AI that had calmly explained humanity's approach to total warfare. You're telling me, Admiral, Lim said slowly, that humanity could destroy our entire fleet without significant effort? Not just our fleet, Kim Nara replied, our entire civilization, and they could do it in a matter of days. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Kim, are you certain about this information? The ship's AI was very thorough in its explanations. Admiral, the humans have been protecting us without telling us. We exist in what they call their frontier zone. Any attack on Keltharan space would be considered an attack on human interests. They're protecting us? They're protecting everyone. 47 species are allied with humanity. They provide protection in exchange for peaceful cooperation. And Admiral, they don't rule through conquest. They rule through the simple understanding that resistance is pointless. Captain Yoon spoke up. Admiral, I recommend we classify this information at the highest level. If this becomes public knowledge, it could cause panic throughout the Empire. Admiral Lim nodded. Agreed. Dr. Kim, I want you to prepare a detailed report, but mark it for the High Council only. Captain Yoon, return to base immediately. We need to discuss this with the government. The transmission ended, leaving the crew of the Wisdom's Edge alone with their terrible knowledge. What do we do now? Choi Minho asked. Kim Nara looked out at the human battleship, still floating silently in space. Now we learn to live with the truth. 3 days later, they arrived at Keltharan Prime. Kim Nara's report had been transmitted ahead of them, and she was immediately summoned to appear before the High Council. The meeting was held in the most secure chamber of the government building, with only the 5 highest-ranking officials of the Keltharan Empire present. Chancellor Bae Hyun, the leader of the Keltharan government, read from Kim Nara's report. You state that humanity maintains a military force capable of conquering the known galaxy. Is this your professional assessment? Yes, Chancellor. But more importantly, they choose not to use that force for conquest. Their entire strategy is based on protection and deterrence. Protection of whom? Asked Defense Minister Oyuna. Everyone. Any species that agrees to peaceful coexistence becomes part of their defensive network. They don't demand tribute or submission. They only require that allied species don't threaten human security or the security of other allies. Foreign Minister Han Jiwoo leaned forward. Dr. Kim, in your opinion, what should be our response to this information? Kim Nara had been thinking about that question for 3 days. We should formally request alliance status with humanity, not because we're afraid, but because it's the intelligent choice. The humans offer protection, trade opportunities, and technological exchange. In return, they ask only for peaceful coexistence. And if we refuse, asked Treasury Minister Park Jinu, then we remain in their frontier zone, protected, but not allied. But Chancellor, I don't think refusal would lead to hostility. The humans seem genuinely committed to peaceful solutions. Chancellor Bay was quiet for several minutes, reading through the report again. Dr. Kim, this ship you investigated, the Iron Will, it was just abandoned there? Yes, Chancellor. The AI explained that it was surplus to requirements after their last war ended. They have 17 ships of that class just floating in space because they don't need them. 17 ships that could each destroy our entire fleet? Yes, sir. The Chancellor closed the report and looked at the other council members. I want this information restricted to this room. Dr. Kim, your official report will state that you investigated an abandoned human vessel and found interesting, but non-threatening technology. Sir, the real report stays classified. We cannot allow this information to become public. It would cause panic, and panic leads to poor decisions. Defense Minister Oyuna spoke up. Chancellor, I recommend we begin formal alliance negotiations with humanity immediately. If Dr. Kim's assessment is correct, we have no choice but to cooperate. Agreed, the Chancellor said. Foreign Minister Han, I want you to contact the Human Embassy. Tell them we're interested in upgrading our relationship from trade partnership to formal alliance. What reason should I give? Han Jiwoo asked. Tell them we've come to better understand humanity's role in galactic security. They'll know what that means. As the meeting ended, Kim Nara realized that the Keltharan Empire was about to make the most important decision in its history. They were choosing to ally with the most powerful military force in the galaxy, not because they were forced to, but because they finally understood the truth. 2 weeks later, Kim Nara stood in the observation deck of a Keltharan space station, watching human ships arrive for the alliance ceremony. The vessels were smaller than the Iron Will, clearly designed for diplomacy rather than warfare. But Kim Nara knew that massive battleships were patrolling nearby, invisible but present. Ambassador Lee Soman, humanity's representative to the Keltharan Empire, approached her. Dr. Kim, I understand you were the one who investigated the Iron Will. Yes, Ambassador. It was educational. Lee Soman smiled. I'm sure it was. The protocol can be overwhelming for first-time visitors. The AI said it was designed to prevent misunderstandings. That's correct. We learned long ago that it's better for other species to understand what we're capable of. Fear of the unknown leads to conflict. Knowledge leads to peace. Kim Nara looked at the ambassador, seeing her in a new light. This pleasant, diplomatic woman was a representative of the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and yet she was here to offer friendship and protection. Ambassador, why doesn't humanity simply conquer the galaxy? You have the power to do it. Lee Soman was quiet for a moment. Dr. Kim, do you have children? Yes, a daughter. What's her favorite thing to do? She likes to build things, toys, structures, art projects. And does she enjoy destroying things? Kim Nara thought about it. No, she gets upset when her creations are damaged. Humans are builders, Dr. Kim. We build ships, cities, civilizations, alliances. Conquest is destruction. And destruction goes against our nature. We fight when we have to, but we prefer to create. Then why build such powerful weapons? Because the universe is dangerous. There are species out there that would destroy everything. We've built if they could. Our weapons exist to protect builders like your daughter. Kim Nara understood. Humanity's power wasn't based on aggression. It was based on protection. They had become the guardians of the galaxy, not because they wanted to rule, but because someone had to stand guard while others built their dreams. "The alliance ceremony is about to begin," Ambassador Lee said. "Your people are about to become part of something much larger than the Keltharan Empire. You're joining a community of species that have chosen cooperation over conflict." As Kim Nara watched the ceremony begin, she realized that her species was not losing its independence. They were gaining something far more valuable: the protection of humanity's restraint. The most dangerous species in the galaxy had chosen to be Guo.